Today we're going to talk about lesson 4.4, graphing equations in slope-intercept form. Intercepts. The x-intercept of a line is the x-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the x-axis. It occurs when y equals 0. The y-intercept of a line is the y-coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. It occurs when x equals 0. So here you can see the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. A slope-intercept form is when a linear equation written in the form y equals mx plus b is in slope-intercept form. The slope of the line is m, and the y-intercept of the line is b. So here we can use this format to identify the slope and the y-intercept. On these two problems, we're going to find or identify the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of the linear equation. So we can do that without even graphing the line. Go ahead and try to pick out the slope and the y-intercept in number 1. Here, if we think about our format of y equals mx plus b, and m being the slope, we can see that the coefficient to the letter x, or the number in front of it, is 3. Therefore, the slope will be 3. Now, when we look at our equation for our y-intercept, we're looking at the number that comes after mx. So we know that it's typically in plus b form. Well, if we look here, we have minus 7. So therefore, our y-intercept is going to be negative 7. Now, take a look at number 2. What's different between number 1 and number 2? If you believe that this is different because y is not by itself, you're correct. So we need to start by solving this equation for y. The opposite of subtracting 1 is to add 1, so we're going to add 1 to both sides. Here we'll have y equals negative 2/3 x plus 1. Go ahead and take a minute to identify the slope and the y-intercept. Here you can see that the slope is negative 2/3 and that the y-intercept is positive 1. On numbers 3 and 4, we're going to need to graph the linear equation, identify the x-intercept, and we could use a graphing calculator to check your answer if we had one, but it's not necessary. So we start our graph at the y-intercept. So start at the y-intercept. So we have negative 4. So we're going to plot a point at negative 4. Then use slope to plot points 1 and 2. Sorry, this should be actually 2 and 3 because we've already plotted point 1. So to plot points 2 and 3. So the idea is that you're going to need 3 points to draw your straight line. Now keep in mind that when you're using big ideas, I believe it only needs you to select 2 points. But when we're drawing them by hand, we should be selecting 3. Now, if we look at our slope, there's no number in the m spot. There's no coefficient. So when nothing is there, it's called the invisible 1. This is like 1x. So our slope is 1, which tells us as a fraction, we go up 1 and over 1. And we can plot 2 additional points by using that slope. Now we're going to need to connect those 3 points with as straight a line as possible. And then we can identify the x-intercept. So where does it cross the x-axis? So if I look at my x-axis, we can see it crosses right here at 4. So my x-intercept is equal to 4. Now, go ahead and try number 4 on your own. Again, with number 4, we're going to start at the y-intercept, so positive 1. And we're going to use our slope. Our slope is -1/2. So this tells us we go down 1 since it's negative and across 2. So down 1 and across 2. Down 1 and across 2. You could have also started here, and if you didn't have enough room on your graph, you could go in the opposite direction. So we could have went up 1 and to the left to continue our point. See how that would still fall in a straight line. Now we're going to connect our points with a straight line. And then we need to identify that x-intercept. So here we can see that we cross the x-axis at +2. So our x-intercept is equal to 2. Now for number 5, it says the cost y in dollars of taking a taxi x miles is y equals 2.5x plus 2. Graph the equation and then interpret the y-intercept and the slope. So I'm going to quickly sketch a graph over here to the right for us to use. So go ahead and do that right now in your paper. All right, as you can see here on my y-axis, I decided to count by 2s, labeling every other line so that it did not look too crowded. And on my x-axis, I decided to count by 1s, and again, labeling every other line. So we have the number of dollars compared to the number of miles. When I go to graph this equation, I'm starting with that y-intercept again. So +2. So on my y-axis, I go to +2. And then my slope is 2.5. So I'm going up 2.5 for every 1 unit across. So up 2 and then about 1/2 and across 1 unit. Now if I go up another 2.5 and across another unit. And I can keep going from here. So my line should look something like this. Now, we've graphed the equation, and now it says to interpret the y-intercept and the slope. Interpret means to explain. Tell us what it means. So the y-intercept, in this problem, what does a y-intercept tell us? We're talking about taking a taxi. So if the y-intercept is $2 at 0 miles, what does that tell us? That should tell us that it's going to cost $2 charge. There's a $2 charge to use the taxi. So this is without even going anywhere. You get in the taxi, it's an automatic $2. Now, a slope is 2.5. So if we're going up $2.5 for every 1 mile, what does this tell us? This means that it costs us an additional $2.50 for each mile traveled. So for instance, you're automatically going to pay that $2, and then you're paying $2.50 for each mile. So I could figure out how much it would cost based on how far I need to go. For instance, just a quick example, if I were going to put 2 miles in here, 250 times 2 is 5 plus 2 is 7. So to go 7 miles, it would cost to go 2 miles, it would cost me $7. We can plug that in to give us a prediction or an estimate of how much it would cost based on our problem.